Hello, my name's Professor Rachel Julian from Leeds Beckett University in the UK. And in this video, we're going to have a look at how you can co-design the research questions, the fundamental part of any research project. Designing a research question is a real skill of a researcher. We might well understand the context, be it a crisis or an ongoing concern about a particular situation. But the actual way in which we design a question which is possible to answer and fits within our sort of current conceptual and other theoretical frameworks is something which a community might not automatically have. So it's part of co-designing. We want to be able to find a way in which the expert local knowledge of the community and their wish to participate and have some ownership can be combined with the skills and expertise of a researcher in knowing what is possible and what is likely to be possible within a research project. We might need to think about where the data is and if it's possible to get hold of it. We might need to think about the methods that could be used, whether or not they fit within sort of like experimental or narrative or ethnographic frameworks, and whether or not those are appropriate to the situation and the context in which we're working. As researchers, we're very used to having to think about the nature of knowledge. If we're looking for an absolute truth to uncover or a number of truths which help us understand the reality of a context. We're used to thinking about the nature of reality if we're looking for something which is the same for everybody in a particular community, or if we're looking for a research question in which the different constructed realities, according to belief and context, can be examined and explored. We may know about knowledge that is already captured or is easy to codify. It could be personal experience, or it could be organised by discipline. Some of the disciplines have their own way of thinking about knowledge, of thinking about how to construct research questions, and those are all ways in which we can contribute to creating really good and possible research questions. But the way in which we're going to co-design and bring that into communities and enable them to understand why this question is the one we're going to answer has to be through conversation. It has to be through a shared learning and listening process. So again, it does take time. Just like researchers, communities are unlikely to simply agree altogether on a single question and approach. So we need to be thinking about our researchers developing or working with people who have community development and engagement skills. So in those skills will be things like how to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in a room. It will be about how to ensure communication is equal to those who maybe have different sort of technical or language ways of thinking, and it might be about people who engage in sort of like long-term thinking as well as sort of coming up with a short-term question. We want to address issues of power, but if we really want people to follow through the whole of our research process, we need to involve them right from the very beginning in thinking about that question. And it is difficult, and as researchers we know that research question is almost the most difficult thing to try and pin down. So we mustn't rush this part of it, because if everybody does understand why we've chosen this question and can see their role and participation and can see that their voice is within it, they're much more likely to support the process, the data gathering and disseminating the findings. And if the researchers question, they can see how it relates to their own life. So if we are talking about health inequalities, for example, if we can find out not just the most immediate sort of like cause of the situation, but can think about the ways in which different people contribute and the roles of different stakeholders, it means that the participants in that community will come out of this with a better understanding themselves. So they will actually have developed new knowledge, new skills and new capacities through participating. They will have a direct impact on the communities. And by having that ownership in there, they will be able to tell other people, they'll be able to actually change the community they have. The first exercise, once you've identified and met with your community, is really to practice developing research questions. So actually, what is the best methods of sharing? Do informal methods where actually everybody gets to sort of like eat together and then everybody shares their ideas and look what everybody thinks. Are there ways in which small groups, so actually if women and young people and older people or people from different villages can meet together in a kind of fishbowl exercise where they all decide what's important and then come together to see what those differences are, what they think, and then can discuss it in the next level. Even a longer term process like that will work. So I think the first is to start practicing with people we already trust on how you come to an agreement about research question, by fully understanding that the choice of the research question will have some determination on exactly how the process goes, because what you choose to focus on can determine what kind of methods or ways of thinking. If you're looking for an absolute answer and a statistical evidence for something, that will determine some of the methods you can choose. If you're looking for a more nuanced understanding of complex systems, then a more exploratory approach will be necessary. A researcher's expertise is very important, because a research question which seeks to understand why people are suffering in a particular way could combine different data sets. So it could combine and having a knowledge of what is already collected within statistics about what is already available with the more experiential narrative type. A researcher should have that knowledge and be able to explain how those two different types of data can be brought together, and whether or not they would be able to answer this question. They can also see whether or not it's a question which is possible to answer within the available time frame, or whether or not it needs to be rethought. But again, it's those community conversations and the engagement process which is so crucial during this time if we're really going to have equitable partnerships. Participatory research is not about prioritising researcher over community or community over researcher. It's about understanding that the two parts of this process are stronger through participation. People do have embedded experiential knowledge. But it's not possible for them to answer all those questions without a broader theoretical and context for understanding the situation in which they are. Using the work of Paulo Freire and Pedagogy of the Oppressed, we know that communities are not always aware of the oppression that they face or the inequalities that they face because they sit within often a very micro context. And although the reality of that micro context is real for understanding what's going on, and in fact the participation and partnership with local communities can reveal new questions that you didn't even know were there about what happens to them. There needs to be an understanding from the outside in which they sit within a national context of politics, of sort of like spending, or even about the distribution of news, rights, and the researcher can place the inequality and oppression within an understanding of policy and structural violence and structural oppression. Participatory research is in some ways different to action research, where researchers are fully embedded within an organisation or a community. Participatory can be a partnership in which the researchers bring a new perspective and understanding which aids the community in doing that. So, for example, if women are excluded within a community, the involvement and partnership with external researchers in addressing why that exclusion takes place and the different methods, they can even connect them to other research about the exclusion of women so that they gain a deeper understanding and a more contextual view of what's going on, combined with that local embedded experiential knowledge which reveals new findings for that community. And by involving that community all the way along, they're able to take those research findings, broaden out their view, and actually change and lead to impact of the research in the future. If a community understands why we're asking those questions and they can check that they are useful questions, then we're at a really good starting point for creating strong, equitable partnerships and participatory research.